This is Beyond the Resume, the podcast that brings you the stories, advice, and insights behind some of the most successful people in real estate. Beyond the Resume is brought to you by Jackson Lucas Executive Search, the industry leader in human capital solutions. Here is Chris Papa and Lisa Flicker.
Rodger Brown, you're a managing director, real estate development at Preservation of Affordable Housing. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much.
Good to be here, Chris. Good to see you.
You as well. Sat down at AHF. We had a long conversation. I got to learn all about you. I was like, this guy, he needs to be on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate that.
You took me up on the offer. Let's just start kind of where you are. POA, should we call it POA?
Yeah, we can do that. That's our short name.
Yeah.
Preservation of Affordable Housing is a mouthful, even though it says exactly what we do.
I love it. Like, it's a great name. Yeah, you understand it. But then there's POA, which is cool too. You sound like I feel like I'm in the know with all these acronyms in the affordable housing world. But can you tell us about POA?
Sure. We are a Boston-based nonprofit developer of affordable and mixed income housing. We started in 2001 as a spinoff from the National Equity Fund.
Okay.
The NEF is a financial intermediary nonprofit. For a minute in time, they thought they wanted to be a real estate developer and owner. So they went out and they bought a troubled portfolio in Missouri and quickly realized that being an owner developer is a whole different kettle of fish than being a financial intermediary. Like, not too many syndicators have to pick up the phone at 2 a.m. and get the toilet unplugged.
No.
So some of their board members decided they were going to get out of the business, and some of their board members decided, why don't we spin this thing off?
Okay.
And see what happens as a separate organization. So Preservation of Affordable Housing was spun off from the National Equity Fund under the leadership of a woman named Amy Anthony, who was like an affordable housing pioneer in Massachusetts. She was the former Secretary of Housing and Community Development under Governor Dukakis back in the day.
Oh, yeah, the tank guy.
Yeah, that's right. And she was involved in a bunch of policy stuff there and managed, along with some other board members from NEF, to set up POA with this initial portfolio of about 800 units in variety of assets in Missouri. And she had a couple of very smart people along with her who were aware that there was a potential for government-assisted housing to be lost to market. Owner gets in, restrictions wear off, they can flip it to market, and the housing might be lost either because they're in a very strong market, which happens sometimes, or because at the other end of the spectrum, they're bad owners who are just limping along and need to get out. And so that was the premise. That was the theory behind Preservation of Affordable Housing. Those first assets became kind of a lab to develop and experiment with financial engineering in the Section 8 world. So back then, they started tinkering with the markdown to market program. If you know markdown to market, HUD insured debt, Section 8 contract with rents, HUD wanting to lower their expense on the rent side, bifurcate the mortgage, lower the rents, there's a hard pay, a soft pay debt structure. And so using that tool, they were able to preserve that 800 units, and they tweaked it a little bit along the way. For example, as a qualified nonprofit, we were able to get HUD to assign their piece of the soft debt to us. So that ultimately we would end up with 100%. That deal structure was basically, when they did the mark-to-market transaction, they split the cash flow, 25% to the owner, 75% to HUD. And because we're a qualified nonprofit and we were committed to keeping the affordability long term, at that time, HUD decided that if you're a qualified nonprofit, they would assign that 75% to you. That made it possible for us to compete with for-profit developers in the preservation game, and in some ways to be able to give an incentive to owners who wanted to leave, and we could step in and preserve the asset.
Right.
And that's kind of
Wow.
where we started
What
in
year was this
2001.
around?
It was 2001. And now it's 2026, and we have about 14,000 units in 14 states and the District of Columbia, where the number I would say probably 80% of our portfolio is Section 8 based, and
Okay.
20% is unassisted, a tax credit, or some moderate income housing, and a variety. I mean, we started out basically doing acquisition rehab work for about the first 7 or 8 years until we built our portfolio up, and then starting in about 2009, we started to be invited into neighborhoods to do neighborhood transformation work. First
Wow.
in
What's
first in New Bedford, Massachusetts, then in Chicago, Illinois.
that's where my best friend's mother grew up.
In New Bedford, great small town, really lovely, right on the ocean. At some point, I think they might have the most valuable fishing catch in the country or something, because it's where a lot of scalloping gets done. And I don't know if you've
Yeah.
gone to buy scallops lately, but they're like $30 a pound. But it's a
I
very
just know it
charming
was
place.
extremely blue collar at some point and Portuguese.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But it's a great town. We got invited by a nonprofit there to come down and kind of trans work with them in partnership to transform a troubled asset that they had developed maybe 20 years ago. And so we did that. We got in. It was a project that was built on a super block. And so we worked with the city, do a master plan, introduce new public roads, built the community building, and that got us more in the neighborhood transformation side of things. It was, that was kind of a blend. We did a little rehab and some new construction to kind of reconnect the project to the surrounding neighborhood. And about that same time, there was a resident organization in Chicago on the south side, directly adjacent to the University of Chicago, who had
Uh-huh.
a project that was built in response to urban renewal.
Okay.
So the political imperative when it was originally constructed was to put as many people on the blocks as possible to stop institutional
What's the project
expansion.
called? What's the project called?
It's called Woodlawn. Now it's called what was the original name of it? Rose
Was it
Park.
was it with Dave Dewerson by any chance? The
No, it was not.
ex-Bears player? Okay. I met his son. He works for Standard, and he was
Yeah.
talking about how some projects they had done. Anyways, sorry. Just
Yeah,
thought it might
no,
be
it was
coincidental.
not. But in this case, it was a 500 unit, severely distressed Section 8 asset, troubled by gang violence. And, it was immediately after the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. So there's a lot of condo fraud. A lot of people had bought single and two family houses and flipped them, and they were abandoned. It was a mess. But they found us in the phone book, believe it or not. That name came in handy. They said, literally, we need someone to help us. HUD had threatened to abate the Section 8, give everybody a voucher, move it out, tear down the property, and just hold it, or maybe it would have actually ended up being owned by the University of Chicago. One doesn't really know. But in any case, we went out there, we worked with the residents, we partnered with them. They had some advocates working with them. We did a master plan for that community, and we partnered with the city of Chicago to apply to HUD in the very first round of the Choice Neighborhood Program.
Oh, cool.
And there were, if I remember correctly, there were four successful applications in that first round. And we were the only non public housing authority to win an award. and
Why
$30
do you think?
million.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because it was Chicago, because the president was 2 neighborhoods away, because we had done a master plan on our own nickel with the resident organization, and the city of Chicago was tied in. So it was
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
was just the stars lined up. And, our president, our founder, was still running the organization at that point, and she had a reputation for being able to execute difficult transactions and understanding the policy world. So that started out, 500 units. Today, we're about 2,400 units in Chicago, not all in that neighborhood, but we're probably in at least half a dozen neighborhoods, even more right now. So we demolished that project and we built back a series of buildings, new buildings, all affordable, a mix of 4% credit projects, 9% credit projects. We did a new markets tax credit project that had workforce housing on top and a daycare center on the ground floor that we're in the process of selling the daycare center to the operator now, so she'll be there. We took one corner of that parcel and we sold it to a developer to build a grocery store because there was no grocery store in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they built a 40,000 square foot grocery store, which was a big success. As part of that deal, we required that the grocery store hire people from the neighborhood. And in fact, we established a workforce training center on our property that trained folks from the neighborhood for a variety of jobs. When they opened the grocery store, I think they had about 385 employees from the neighborhood working there. I mean, it was a huge, huge success. We took another piece of that property
Mhm.
and we gave it to an organization called Metro Squash that had previously been located on the University of Chicago campus or adjacent to it. And what Metro Squash did was they had education and squash programs for neighborhood kids. In fact, it really successful. I mean, they've had kids, they compete nationally in squash tournaments. The kids come there after school. Before they can play squash, they have to get tutored and do all their homework. And when you walk in the place, on one side is squash court, on the other side is a wall with all the banners from the colleges where the kids went. It's really a fabulous story. I think the guys were maybe venture capitalists, raised about $8 or $10 million to build this facility, and it's absolutely smashing.
That is, I mean, that work sounds awesome. Like that sounds like a dream. If I could envision a dream job for me, it would be coming in and transforming a neighborhood and getting the work, work training. I don't know about the squash part, but like, that's fine too. I'll take it.
Didn't know either, but it actually is great. The kids love it. You wouldn't think in the hood that people would be. These guys know what they're doing. It's a great. The kids are in there after school. It's very busy. So we did that. We did a senior building, and then at the other end of the neighborhood, other end of that strip of road, there was a subway station. So we built a mixed use building right at the subway stop that's got
Wow.
the oldest continuous operating restaurant in the city of Chicago as a tenant. And then a bunch of local businesses or locally owned franchises like UPS store and yoga studio,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe natural food store, that kind of stuff. Very curated for that neighborhood with about 65 units on top. And in the meantime, we bought a dilapidated strip store across the street. So we're working with the CTA to do another transit-oriented development there. That's going to take a little while. And then a couple blocks down, we just got awarded a couple years ago a site to do another mixed income housing project. So that is growing. We did some scattered site in all those buildings that were in trouble. We picked up some of them and we did 4% rehab deals in the surrounding neighborhoods to kind of fill in a little bit. And now we've got a 220 unit, 22-story tower that we picked up a few blocks away. It's actually 2 blocks from the Obama Library, and we're in the middle of doing a fairly extensive renovation on that. That's going to take about 3 years.
So
So
you're big in
Chicago,
Chicago. You're
we're
big in
big in
Chicago.
Chicago. We love Chicago.
I mean, they must love you too, because that sounds really amazing. I think, and you're the managing director of development there, though, so I'm sure you're on top of all this stuff, right? You're kind of
Well, I have the distinct privilege of working with some really smart and really dedicated people, and I just have to try to keep them, supported and fed. I mean, really, real estate development staff in Boston, in Chicago, and Washington, D.C. I think we have about 30 developers, and we've developed in the last 7 years or so a construction management group as well that I manage, that manages the construction of most of the properties that we're doing. I think maybe last year we probably had $600 million of construction in progress. Number moves around a little bit, but
how many
from
people work at POA between all the different I mean,
well,
you
we
do
own
property
our own
management too, right?
right? We own property management. Property management has a little north of 550 people, and we probably have about 70 in the corporate office in Boston between development, asset management, finance. We have Community Impact, which is a group that does a lot of support services for our resident populations, and legal. So we're starting to grow up.
Pretend somebody's listening to this podcast, learning about Rodger Brown, managing director of development. Like, what do you actually do? I mean, you're doing all this stuff, but like, what do you like day to day? Like, what is your kind of job?
What a great question. Well, I can tell you what I don't do. I don't do project management anymore, but I do care and feeding of project managers. So I kind of help figure out where we're going to deploy our resources. We have several internal processes that, as a member of senior management, I'm involved in. So internal investment committees, setting policy for the company. I would say I spend a fair amount of time in industry activities and business development.
Right. That's awesome.
So, for example, this morning I was on the phone with staff people in Miami, where we're doing a project trying to talk about policy and some moves we need to make down there. I was on the phone with my staff in Washington, D.C., talking about new acquisitions and setting up marketing and promotion plans for 1,000-unit development we're doing in Washington, D.C. And so it's a variety of things, mostly about making sure that our resources are deployed appropriately, because the pipeline is ever changing, the policies are changing, and we find ourselves a need to be able to be nimble to respond to changes in the industry.
Great answer. Yeah, I was thinking as soon as I don't usually ask that question, but like I asked that and I was like, I wonder what I would say if somebody asked me what I do day to day. It's kind
Yeah,
of like, it's hard to like, it's so much. It's just hard to like put into words, I guess.
it's the greatest job in the world. This week, I was in Washington, D.C. on Monday, doing in a group of people who were trying to wrestle with issues related to the care and feeding of emerging minority developers,
Wow.
particularly in this environment where where DEI is being attacked, and a lot of programs that have been set up to help minority developers advance have been pulled back. And when you look at the statistics, like I would say, in the multifamily space, maybe 1% of the developer firms are head by people of color, right?
Yeah.
Across, I can't tell you how many rooms I walk into, and I'm the only person of color there. It's just, and I know that a large part of our industry is serving those communities. So there was that on Monday. And then Tuesday was back in the office on project stuff. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I happened to serve on an advisory council for the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. So I spent a couple of days just talking about Federal Home Loan Bank operations and their affordable housing program and the modifications that they want to make to the program to make it more efficient, what they have to do to respond to the needs of the current regulator and the policy directives that are coming from this administration. So I spent a couple of days doing that, and then last night I was back in the mine working on deals.
So what you're speaking of, you said person of color, like I'm sure, when you started in this industry, there weren't many people, probably even less people of color. Like what drew you to this industry? Like affordable housing, community development. Like how did you get involved? Like why did you go this path?
Actually, what happened? It's an interesting story. Fresh out of college, I worked for IBM, so I was in a corporate management training program for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So
A famous one.
learning about technology and how to be a salesman and how to do public speaking and how to do business analysis and that kind of thing. And I couldn't see myself growing up to be a IBM guy. I
I can
just
see you doing that. I could totally see you. I'm kidding.
I didn't see it at that time. I don't know, for whatever reason. And so I was there for a couple of years during the training program, then I left for a year. And I worked in a bar, and I went back to I went to BC, so I went back to my dean and my professors and said, listen, I need to figure out another direction in life. And
Hmm.
and one of my professors said, well, look, I think you should go over to MIT and talk to this professor that I'll connect you with. So I went to MIT. It was the Department of Urban Studies.
Mm,
And I talked to this professor. He said, here's what we do. Here's what I suggest you do. Go and volunteer in Boston City Hall in the neighborhood planning department and
cool.
see how you like it. Then you learn about it. So at night, I would go to the bar and work. And during the day, I'd go volunteer in City Hall to figure out what neighborhood planning was about. And when I was there, I met a guy that was doing an internship there who was a graduate student at MIT. And we
Okay.
became friends. And he said, look, I think you would really do well in this program, this urban studies program at MIT. And there's a fellowship that I'd like you to apply for. And I'll help you do that. And so he got me a fellowship for into MIT for 2 years to study urban planning. And one of the conditions of that fellowship was that I volunteer either in government or in a nonprofit 1 day a week. So I'd already done a little bit of the government thing. So I volunteered in a nonprofit in the south end of Boston. And it was great opportunity, very entrepreneurial, very small outfit. And the guy had a grant to buy and rehab a building. And he's like,
Oh,
here,
cool.
here's this, right? In those days, here's $50,000. Go buy a building, put together the capital staff, and figure out how to rehab it. So I got an architect to volunteer to do my design. And then he connected me with City Hall. He managed that. And I had another friend who was a carpenter. He was actually my landlord's brother, but he was a master carpenter. And then I had another friend who was associated with the Boston Medical Center. He ran a program where he had high school students during the day, in the morning, exposing them to the medical field. And so we made a deal. I was like, look, after your kids are done, uh, have them come to me because I had a building. I found this building. It was right next to the medical center. They can come to me in the afternoon and work and make money. And I'll have my master carpenter friend kind of direct the crew. And that's what we did. We had the we have to budget on a shoestring with high school students and one master carpenter and an architect who volunteered his time. And it was a
Wow.
great time. It was fun. And I got kind of hooked into that world. And then my volunteer architect friend recommended me to a nonprofit developer, and that was kind of off and running.
So as a developer, The skill set is to kind of know who needs to be involved and try to figure out how to find them and organize it all, right?
Exactly. Exactly right.
And I guess like somebody who's maybe looking at their career, wanting to be a developer, like what kind of skill sets do you need to kind of get into it besides being able to juggle 1,000 balls in the air?
Well, I would say one of the things that really benefited me early in my career was the fact that I had that 2 years of management training with IBM. And particularly, I had exposure to technology when technology wasn't really a thing in affordable housing. Like, we did all our calculations on HP 12C and adding machines. And because I had been exposed to computers, I actually had, went out and I got talked my boss into getting me a laptop before they were even laptops. They were like little suitcases that you had to call. And I remember going into the HUD office because we were doing 202s or something. And I came in, normally you would bring in like pencil and paper. I came in holding this little suitcase and opened it up, and there was a screen with all the numbers on it. And so it gave me kind of immediate street cred
Right.
and allowed me back in the day of Lotus 123. I don't know if you remember Lotus 123,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
there was Excel, there was Lotus. And so I got a facility with that. So that gave me a little bit of an edge. But speaking is huge. You need to be able um comfortably engage with people that you may not really know. You're always selling yourself to whoever you're talking to. In this business, a lot of it, is I like to say a lot of it is relationship based. You
Right.
develop,
Yeah.
and whether you're talking to government officials or subcontractors or general contractors or residents or my colleagues in the company, you got to have good relationships with people and know how to build relationships. A lot of times that involves just a lot of listening and asking the right questions. Right.
Well, you mentioned, yeah, that first deal, like, you brought in all these people because you had relationships with them and they like you, right? And so
Right.
they, yeah, yeah, it's awesome. I mean, that's, you need the technical side, but also I guess a big part of affordable housing is like, so it feels intimidating. There's so many acronyms and it's like financing from here, there, the other thing. Like, how quickly did you learn? It's like, it's learning another language, right? Essentially.
Well,
How quickly did you learn that?
I'm ex- I'm not a great student, but I'd really like to learn by doing.
Mm,
So this was great. I was working with organizations early in my career where they were figuring out stuff as well. I mean, when I started, it was kind of before tax credit, so it was an old
hmm.
time syndication, and then the tax credit came, and when LIHTC came along, it was new to everybody. No one knew what the hell to make of this thing. So, so a lot of it was like, go swim, go figure it out. Get your, remember when they had the HUD handbook, CFR, whatever it was. And so you'd have a set of those on the bookcase, and then you'd go look it up, and you had to fill out the form, and you'd figure it out. You just get in there and do it, which is how I learned. Do
Me too.
that so much anymore. We've got specialists for a bunch of different stuff, but back in the day, you basically had to figure it out for yourself, which is fun, which I loved.
Me too. Yeah. I don't like being, yeah, I want to just dive in and figure it out and be stressed for a while and then I'll get in the flow. I like that.
Right. And for me, I like to tell my project managers now, even though we have financial specialists, we have people who are analysts who run the numbers and track the markets and all that. I tell all my project managers, if you really want to be a great project manager, you have to understand the numbers better than anybody else in the room.
Right.
Right. You can't
Understand the numbers. It's the economy, stupid.
Don't rely on the analysts. You need to understand it because when you're talking with your contractor, your property management company, or with your public funders or your equity providers, they have to have confidence that you understand the deal and understand, it's all so interconnected that, you need to understand that when you turn the knob over here, it's going to affect something over here. Like if I leverage the hell out of a project, what does that mean when I'm done in 2 years and my management? company comes in and there's no cash flow. I've underwritten the deal so tight that they're choking from day one. Can't do that.
Uh, well, it sounds like transforming a city block in Chicago is pretty rewarding, but probably pretty stressful. But you're about to do something that is extremely stressful and not rewarding at all, because you just sat on the hot seat, Rodger. It's just pain. There's no
Not
gain.
too
It's
much.
just pain.
It's a lot of fun, Chris. Each of these conversations is an opportunity for me to reflect on my career.
It's gain. It's no gain, just pain. We'll see. We'll see
Okay.
about that, Rodger. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Go for it.
All right. Easy one. Easy one. Is there a podcast or book that, I don't know, stands out to you that you would recommend?
I read a lot of stuff that's not really related to the industry. I mean,
Me too. I don't read
listen,
anything related to it. I don't relate
I
it.
listen
I don't read.
to Professor G, Galloway, that guy podcast. I watch him every now and then. The books that kind of affect me a lot. There's a doctor called Atul Gawande. He's a surgeon at Mass General, but
Okay.
he's a brilliant writer, and he's written a book called Being Mortal, which I need to pick up and read again. But it's just a good reminder that how 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 fragile our life is, that we're spinning around on a little rock in the middle of this enormous universe, and we
Right.
take it off and we take it all. Sometimes we take ourselves too seriously, and we take it all for granted, which is a weird thing to think about. The fact that, not to get too morbid, but none of us are getting out of this alive. So
I know. Right.
right? So enjoy every day, enjoy the mystery, be creative, try to get outside the box, try to do something exciting, have fun with what you're doing. Because every minute is a blessing. And being able to leave the world a better place than you found it is like a really inspirational thought for me. And whether that means you know, building a better neighborhood in Chicago, having some kid learn squash that never had the chance before, creating some affordable home ownership units in Boston, or being the driving force behind a 1,000-unit neighborhood in Washington, D.C., it's all good.
It's awesome, man. One of my favorite
Gets me up
sayings is,
every day, and it's pretty exciting. Even though it can be nerve-wracking, it's hard to think of something that would be more rewarding for me personally.
well, it shows. It comes across. It comes across. One of my favorite sayings is, "Stay calm. Everything's out of control."
It's
Or
exactly right.
at least out of control by me. I can't control any of this stuff.
Particularly in this business, it's like the tariffs are here and the oil is here and the policy's going away and DEI is in one day and out the next. But no matter what happens, we still have to be creative and move it forward.
Do the work,
Do the work.
even if you
Exactly.
fail, even if it's fail. I think that's what Mother Teresa would say. Even if you fail, you just gotta keep doing it. What do you
Failure is
do?
learning. Failing is
You're a
learning.
you're a busy guy. I mean, do you do anything outside of work to kind of keep you grounded? You into squash?
I am actually a long distance bike rider, believe it or not. I
Nice.
really, I really enjoy bike riding. So I've got this year will be the 15th year that I've done something called the Pan Mass Challenge, which is a fundraiser for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, another great cause. I think we've probably it's been around for a long time, maybe 50 years. I think they've raised over $1 billion. And so every year I raise, I don't know, 75 to $10,000, and I ride
Wow.
85 miles a day for 2 days as part of that
Wow.
ride. And then I try to do recreational stuff. Like, I've ridden a little bit in Japan. I've ridden a little bit in Italy and Mallorca. Last year I
Cool.
went to Hawaii and did a fundraiser for a friend out there. Uh, I really love bike riding, and it's really good for my peace of mind and my body.
You get to combine that with giving back, which seems to be two things you like to do.
It's true.
Uh, yeah, when you combine stuff, when we combine stuff that we like with things, yeah, I try to tack on the same thing with like running and stuff. I try to tack it on with
Yeah.
different charities and things.
So I've been lucky
Yeah,
enough to have some friends to pull me along in that direction.
we don't do this alone. Now you're kind of a big shot, so I'm sure you've hired a lot of people over your career. What
I
do
would
you
not
look for when
characterize myself as a big shot. I'm going to take exception with you there, but keep
I'm
rolling.
characterized? You're not. You don't have big shotism, but you're a big deal. I'm describing you as that. What do you look for when you're hiring somebody?
I would say I want someone, hire people who understand and are committed to our mission,
Mhm.
who love to do community development work and make communities better. It's an added bonus if they have technical skills. We're trying to structure ourselves so that's not quite as mandatory, right? Because we now have specialists. We've got, a finance group that works with me, a couple of really smart guys, and they're the spreadsheet jockeys. So if a project manager comes in and they're not that facile with the spreadsheet, we got somebody to help them.
Right.
It's better if they do. It gets them a leg up competitively because it's a very competitive world out there. And most importantly, actually, beyond anything else, they have to be a good teammate. We are I mean, back in the day, there was only maybe 6 of us. So, though it was kind of easy
Right.
to work because you saw everybody, there was no video, we were all in the same office. Now, we're a lot bigger, right? We have functions that we just didn't have internally before, so the ability to collaborate, particularly across departments, is key. You cannot be a one-man band. You cannot even think about being a one-man band. You have to be able to communicate clearly and enjoy collaboration because that is the name of the game, right? Development likes to think we're like the brain surgeons and the, jet pilots and all that, but we're not getting off the ground if we don't have legal, if we don't have asset management, if we don't have property management or building technologies. We need to be able to work together as a team because there's too much going on for one person to handle it on that. Back in the day, you could do that. I could be my own construction manager back in the day. I can't
Right.
do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
You
I'm not
got
doing $25,000 unit rehabs anymore. Now it's $100,000, and there's passive house and net neutral and a bunch of other stuff that are just way beyond my capabilities. But some really smart and talented people who work in that space, and my job is be able to know how to communicate with them. And when if I'm a project manager in my company, it's not so important that I know everything. It's more important that I know who knows it and
right.
know how to communicate with them and raise my hand and get them to bring their expertise to my job when I need it. So
And
that's
it's
that's probably the most important thing.
yes, that's very important. Yeah. My industry as well. People get bogged down by just trying to be in their own little silo and or like,
That
just trying to
the
keep everything. What is it?
PMs who get in trouble, that's the one thing that gets them in trouble, because we're all ambitious and we all want to achieve. But, if you get stuck, you got to know how to raise your hand
Right.
and
Humility.
know it. Right. And we try to foster a culture where that's encouraged. We don't want people to feel like, they can't ask for help. We all need to ask for help, up and
Yes.
down.
Speaking of help, what mentors or just people in general that you want to give a shout out to that have kind of helped you along your careers and life?
Okay, Amy Anthony, for one, who was our original founder, who's no longer with us, but supported me along the way. One of the first people I worked with when I was in the development space was a guy named Peter Munkenbeck, who was early on at the Community Builders. It was not called the Community Builders then, but Peter was my supervisor. He's a very smart Harvard-trained lawyer that taught me a lot. I would say my first really big development opportunity was with a small MBE firm in Boston named Cruise Construction, and they gave me the ultimate freedom to like do deals, which was great. Small was firm, but the firm was small, but I could just do whatever I wanted to do.
I
And
love
then
that. Yeah, that's
from
how I started my career too.
Yeah, and along the way, I worked with a guy named Howard Cohen, who's one of the smartest people I ever met in this business. Howard was one of the founders of Beacon Communities.
Cool. Yeah.
Very smart guy and very supportive, extremely supportive of me during my entire career. I don't have, just he's just a brilliant guy. Spent a couple years with Arthur Wynn and the Wynn shop, and
Oh yeah.
learned some hard
You're
lessons.
dropping all the big names out there. Yeah.
I learned some
Not
hard
all the big
lessons about you know, development in the real world.
names.
And so that's kind of the cast. And of course my wife, who's put up with me all these years, kind of keeping me out
Yeah.
of trouble. But yeah,
Well, you
I had a cast of people. It was like, and actually the most important one is the guy who got me in the and that
hmm.
guy's name is Victor Hoskins. And Victor just stepped down from being the CEO of Fairfax County Economic Development. Fairfax is a big county just outside of DC, and he ran the economic development shop for about 6 years. But a truly brilliant guy, not because he found me, but he just is. And out of his goodness of his heart and he's a very religious guy. He took he took uh, care to pick this guy up who was stumbling around and kind of point me in the right direction.
Well, you are a mentor to many folks out there, Rodger. It's been great getting to know you. I want to do a case study for that Chicago, all those deals in Chicago. That sounds amazing. Maybe one day we'll do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that would be great. Love to have you do it. It's still, it's a work in progress.
And so am I. So thank you for coming on the podcast, my friend. I look forward to seeing you hopefully in Nashville. Thank you for all the good work you do. It's inspiring. I'm energized, man.
Let's go
You
get it.
energize me.
Let's go get it.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Resume, a Jackson Lucas podcast where we take a deep dive into the career journeys of some of the top minds in real estate and equip you with the knowledge to move forward in your path towards the success you've envisioned. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Beyond the Resume. Be grateful for your support. All episodes of Beyond the Resume are brought to you by Jackson Lucas, building inclusive and diverse businesses through talent acquisition. Visit us at jacksonlucas.com